Hi there, and welcome back to the Few Show. Today we have Spencer. Spencer is a six-time team leader at Seed, Series A, and publicly traded B2B SaaS companies. He's carried out roles where he was central to growth, operations, and development during early stages. He's trusted and respected as an executive with over 20 years of experience defining and maintaining revenue strategies, architecting and integrating revenue streams, and designing and launching revenue-generating programs. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Spencer.
Hey, David, thanks for
So
having
I
me.
took a look at your LinkedIn and I noticed that you don't call yourself a CEO, but instead a CRO, a Chief Revenue Officer. Why is that?
Primarily for optics, also to reduce some of the sales outreach. What I really try to strive for, having obviously a background in sales and driving revenue, is I try to respond to every outreach that I get from an individual salesperson. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, out of respect for their effort, and you never know. I mean, just through networking and through understanding, potential value propositions and what they're offering, there may be some fit. And so I've created some really good connections from, people doing the sales outreach. And I've actually tested it, having the CEO title versus CRO title, and the volume of sales outreach goes down, when you're CRO. So I thought that was great, and it's also a natural transition from my previous roles versus that hard skip to CEO, and it keeps me humble, to be honest with you, right? As despite me leading, every function in the organization, it's keeps me focused on the things that do drive revenue and has that cross-functional alignment.
Can you describe in greater depth what I guess your understanding of, or how do you define a CRO and how does that differ from a CEO in terms of the day-to-day or their domains of responsibility?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, one primary difference is the engineering team rolls up to me as CEO. So as CRO, that typically wouldn't be the case. And so I'm the product owner and I am overseeing engineering. And the language and the priorities is completely different than revenue-driven functions. And with engineers, you being an engineer, you would completely probably relate to this. The tasks and the work items are very, very different than driving a campaign or building a go-to-market strategy, even engaging with customers. And so that whole framework of releases and epics and getting the user stories down to drive really, really good feature requests, all of that whole workflow is so different. So that's one part that's different from a CEO perspective to a CRO perspective. The other big example is fundraising. We're going for our seed round right now. In the neighborhood of $1 to $2 million, and we've had dozens and dozens of conversations with prospective investors, from accredited investors and angels to VCs. And so that whole management of those relationships and conversations, and also looking at the finance aspect of it and managing cash flow is quite different than a CRO role.
Is it your intent to hire a CTO and a CEO down the line, or do you plan to blend the roles for a longer duration of time?
Yeah, so currently we have about 15 people in the company. Some part-time, some full-time. They're all 1099 and contractors right now, but very, very committed to ioAudio and its growth. Plus, we've got two development firms, one in Ukraine and one in Poland, and a couple of great guys in Pakistan that's working on the main platform, and then our design firms in Vancouver. So yes, the idea is that we're going to bring on a director to a C-level to oversee the technical and also be part and parcel the product owner and customer facing in terms of capturing those user stories and converting those into requirements. Related to that, we will have a project manager and a business analyst. We want the business analyst because they're the people who can map out the flow charts, do the diagramming, obviously author the right user stories, all of those things in conjunction with a director of engineering. And the project manager is going to be there not only to align the technical, but to also maintain alignment between marketing, sales, product, and engineering, and of course finance. So we want to kick off with the right alignment across all the functions. And it's one final note on that. It's even more critical in this virtual environment, right? So it's really, really difficult when everybody's just moving 100 miles per hour and keeping all that alignment that's required. So the project manager and the business analyst is going to help with making sure that that happens in a virtual environment when we're moving at such a fast pace.
And you've been remote from day one, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we have no plans of launching an office. The plan was really never to launch an office. It might have been something that we would have considered for optics and for corporate presence. But now with the pandemic and everything that's happened over the last year and a half, it's just confirmed the need to not have that overhead and extra management at this stage. So yeah, there's no plans to launch an office. And we will grow in the next few years. The plans are to grow to about 60 to 100 people. So, and again, there's no line item for an office expenditure.
Remote's definitely efficient in terms of capital expenditure and trying to maximize your runway with the amount of money that you raise.
It is. And, again, the pandemic's just accelerated adoption of Zoom and all the tools that we are, obviously very familiar using. And so that's exciting because that's really just shortened the onboarding around that collaboration piece. Whereas it normally would have taken X number of months or, a bunch of time to really socialize through virtual settings and situations. Now we don't have as much of a concern there because people, understand how to use these tools and communicate. It's more now the conversations around understanding fatigue, understanding exhaustion, understanding if people have really created the boundaries within their homes to separate work and their personal life, and they're comfortable in terms of communicating that so that we have a good understanding and we can collaborate to make sure that people do get the breaks that they need and they're not overdoing it. This is really the challenging part in the virtual environment that we're seeing. And that can be very costly. I mean, that could actually affect production timelines. It's done that. It's been somewhat of a downside, where people keep going. They're very passionate. They want to work. They want to please everybody. But then we start realizing that there's some sort of degradation in work quality, or the response times or completion times aren't being met. And so we've got to just, interact and intervene and say, look, why don't we take a break on that? Maybe reroute into another area and we'll get this work over to somebody else. And then we start seeing that they're just fine with it. They're just moving. And so I think that's the biggest challenge with this remote, not having an office situation.
So you mentioned looking for a project manager who's able to be pretty competent in a remote environment. Are you currently looking for one, or is there someone you've already found?
No, we're looking.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we are looking. Yeah.
The reason I asked is because I worked with a number of project managers when I was at Uber, and
Yes.
I think they are the type of people who love in person the most, just because
Yeah.
the cross-domain collaboration is easiest when you can literally just walk to someone's desk and be like, hey, this person is dependent on you for like X, Y, and Z. Like, what's the status on that? Versus sending an email and not being sure of when you'll get an answer.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
something you're afraid of?
Yeah, 100%. It's I guess it's not necessarily afraid, of course, but it's a major consideration that has this project manager operated in a virtual environment before, and can they facilitate this cross-functional collaboration and do this in a way that they don't have visibility to all the side conversations. This actually requires the executive team and the people that the project manager is relying on to over communicate the current situation. What they normally wouldn't have to do, or we can get together. So that has to be something that is cultural and systemic across the board, where there's that communication. Also, the frequency of daily check-ins, for example, communicating on Slack. We use ClickUp as our task and project management platform. Making sure that we're maintaining good response times and there's details and specifics. One other factor is that this person cannot be shy. This is a big thing, and so if you get somebody who is very specific, they are very clear as far as the intent of the conversation and what they're trying to get out of it, and even creating that line of demarcation that, hey, this is more of a social conversation, this is just more of a get to know you kind of stuff. Because people, as you know, being in a remote environment, they're always questioning, some of the motives for the communication. Where did this question come from? Why is that, being asked now? What's the timing of this really? Did I do something wrong? Or all of those things start kind of percolating through your head, and there's this residual kind of accumulation of all that energy, and then eventually it creates paranoia. It creates, this kind of confined thing. Is that, am I tackling all this stuff properly? The communication. So that's a big part. When we are interviewing these project managers, we want to see that they have the maturity, they have the skill set, they have the experience that can operate in these kind of blinder environments, right, where you can't see everything and you still need to accomplish everything. So that's just a couple of challenges that we're trying to overcome and make sure that we address.
I imagine COVID forces a lot of people who are otherwise extroverts to spend a lot of time, I guess, just with the quote unquote like roommate upstairs in their head.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people around them. Is that a problem that you personally face, or do you feel like you're able to like balance the voice in your head, like all those like secondary thoughts that come when due to lack of context in virtual communication?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've been virtual most of my career, and I've had, lots of office jobs too. So I've had a hybrid, and then I've spent a lot of time traveling. So, and we had an office at WeWork, and we've had co-sharing spaces, and so I've been through a lot of these environments, and it's you end up becoming, what I find, you become very, very polite. Like there's a tremendous amount of etiquette and politeness where when you're in an in-person situation, you could be a little bit more direct, right? And so that can kind of cloud things. Because again, the person's just reading some message in Slack and they don't fully understand the context of it, right. And they're busy and they're cranking away and they just want to get a quick response out, but that's not really giving you the full story. And so that's a big issue, as far as, being able to just move things as fast as you want to move them and then just not getting the full context of that response. See that a lot. But this is something that we actually do at ioAudio. We try to coach through this. We actually have conversations around this, that it's okay. For the engineers, it's especially important. They're typically shyer, they're quieter, right? They're more introverted, and that's great, and that's fantastic. But in a remote situation, you need that clarity, you need that understanding, you need to know where they stand in terms of, coding out a feature and exactly, when they think they're going to be done, or trying to figure out the timing there. And even asking a direct question like that, as is very difficult to answer. Like, you don't know how long sometimes it's going to take to code out a feature and get it into staging. You just don't know, and you can't give that visibility. But it's hard to manage a business that way, right? Without knowing when these timelines are going to end. And then you add in the polite factor and the respect and authority versus all of that. And you've really got to train through this. It's really got to be a conscious effort that this is okay, to communicate and be direct. And this is the kind of culture we want to enforce and build. And it takes time for some of the new people to figure that out. But once they're in the rhythm, then they've got it, right? And then we also finally just encourage, ask about people's families, ask about their life, ask about what they did last Friday night. It's okay. You can do that. Don't be shy about that. Get to know who you're working with. It's perfectly fine.
So one of the things I like to do is to use voice and video whenever possible, just because
Yes.
I think, I don't know how they measure this, but apparently 90% of communication is not what you say, but how you say it. And I think you lose that 90% when you're sending a Slack message. No one knows the tone. Sarcasm is really hard to tell, even when you're talking about like casual jokes, it's really hard to tell when there's like someone. It's hard to tell how serious
So
people are.
true.
And you have to figure out, okay, how do I balance that with my more traditional forms of communication, i.e., like in person, in office, like, hey, tap someone on the shoulder and tell them something.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. A big part of what we do is we do subcontract a lot of things. It could be on the demand gen side, of course, engineering, as we mentioned. There's all sorts of subcontract relationships. And so in a lot of situations, we may not have direct contact with the person who's actually producing the work item, because there might be a layer of project management or some other level that we're interacting with, and then the work's getting delegated within their organizations. And so what we try to do as much as possible is just recording a loom. Just record what we're seeing in terms of, and provide the feedback. And that has helped so much in terms of just accelerating. Oh, who's asking for this? Oh, that's what they sound like. Great. And then it's so easy to clarify anything that you want to clarify and then just respond back. So that's made a huge difference. And these tools are so easy to use now. Loom, ClickUp's got a video recorder in there now. I mean, there's all sorts of great tools like that. So we try to do that as much as possible.
So when you're hiring for engineers, do you look for the ability to communicate off the bat, or is that something you prefer to coach after the fact?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a really good question, David. I would say a combination of both. This is me talking in terms of hiring, right? And looking at, is the talent an appropriate fit? Is it something that we can groom? How important is it to have that cultural fit right off the bat? All of that kind of stuff. No matter how many interviews you go through, how many demos or trial situations, all of that kind of stuff, it still may result in not the best hiring decision. You could do a lot of front-end work, reference checks, all that kind of stuff, and you can still see that, okay, maybe this person, wasn't the right fit. What I like to do is give people as much opportunity to improve, to educate themselves, to get spun up, all of that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, we're hiring good people. Like, these are really just good people. I mean, they care about their families, they care about their community, they've worked hard in their career, and they're up for the challenge of what we're trying to build in terms of everything at ioAudio. So that's okay. I mean, if they don't know everything and they just, again, haven't really hit it off right off the bat, that's fine. I've moved people around. I've moved engineers. I'm like, you're too slow on this thing. Let's get you into mobile. Let's just, move you over here and start working on that. And you see the reciprocation on that is huge. Like, you end up building this tremendous amount of loyalty and connection with people that typically might have been let go, It's just like, this is not going to work out, right? But they're so grateful, right, for that second chance and that opportunity, and just the observation of, like, this might be an uncomfortable situation where it's not working out in the specific scope, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You say, look, they're still good people. And this is, in a startup environment, it's very tough to do. If you're a big company with 50,000 people, sure, you can reallocate the resources and all of that. But in a small company where everybody matters and, the work projects are really, really critical to moving timelines forward and requests, it's a little harder to do. So, but we're doing it. And that's, I think, it's produced a lot of loyalty and a lot of goodwill to our brand and the company, and to the point where they're referring people. Even customers and their opening, they trust the environment, and it's a little bit more safe. Again, back to the virtual thing, it really reinforces, the commitment in a virtual situation to give people an additional opportunity and a chance. So yeah, that's one of the things that we do.
What's the chance that you've seen, or I guess from your history, what is the probability that someone takes that situation and turns it around and ends up being like a stellar performer?
Wow. Have seen that a few times. But it's not so linear in the sense that
I see.
The intent might be there, the commitment again to the brand and the culture is there, and obviously they've got that skill set, but it's not always transferable to are they the right kind of coachable? Do they have that presence, cross-functionally, or that next level present? So it's worked in some situations, but this is something we're working on. This is something that we're truly working on. Is like how do you onboard the second level, third level? So you've got, and that's one thing that I see just consistently across a lot of startups, is that there is no onboarding between the junior levels and the executive side. It's starting to happen. I'm part of Revenue Collective. They've got great programs to coach associates into executive level positions. And so they get a full understanding of what they're walking into, some of the nuances, all of that kind of stuff. But within a lot of organizations, it doesn't exist. In large organizations, it might. And in really forward-thinking organizations, sure. But in a startup, in a virtual environment, there's not a whole lot of bandwidth to do that. So you end up hitting these inflection points, right, in terms of growth, in terms of financing, outside capital, and then that drives the next iteration for the org and the team. And so if that junior person hasn't been properly mentored and coached and transitioned, they're going to miss out on that opportunity, and the organization could miss out on a potential really solid senior level promotion, right? And having that part of the team. So I think that's a gap that we're actively trying to figure out and work on and try to understand how we can do that better in a remote environment.
A lot of the founders I talk to have this philosophy. I wouldn't say it's a majority, but at least a lot of the ones I've talked to have this philosophy that they only want to hire senior players because they're trying to grow at such a rate that they can't. They're not sure if they can afford to invest time into junior, call it engineers, product managers, product planners, etc. Do you feel?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Because, senior level people will bring their own, they'll bring their own baggage. I mean, as much as they understand what to do, they've also got, baggage. And it may not be the right cultural fit. What I look for is people that can create process and adhere to process, and they're comfortable doing that. For example, as we're looking for this director / senior level person to oversee engineering and also be the product owner at this point, if they can't fit into a 30-day agile sprint, right, with constant customer feedback and requirements for customer development, and then also that collaboration with sales who's creating, the right pipeline with the direct sales, the channel opportunities, the partnership opportunities, we're looking at all of that, then they could be stellar. They could be fantastic, but it's not going to work in our environment. So senior level people, they're fantastic, but they also come with, their nuances. And, it goes beyond the cultural fit. It's got to be the right fit in terms of looking at collaborating and creating that new culture, those new systems and processes, all of that. So the junior people, it's amazing. I mean, they're hungry. They are, they're process junkies in a lot of cases. They get it. They step up to the plate. They're eager to just grow and learn and all of that. The downside is that, if they don't have the experience that the senior level people have, then they need to be told and guided a lot, in terms of what to do. So there's trade-offs. Nobody's perfect, including myself. Right? It's like we're all learning as we build. So it just varies.
So in the bio I started off the show with, it mentions that you've been a 6-time team leader. What have you learned across all those interactions that you're really glad?
Wow, that's another great question, David. What first comes to mind is that the rate of change that's happening right now is immense. I'm a little older. I'm just going to say a little older, but I'm older. And when I first started in sales, Act had just come out. Okay, so this was a CRM, and it was server-based, and you had to log in via your big old laptop or computer, and that's where you recorded your sales activity. And in the trunk of your car, because I was in field sales, I had a stack of Thomas Brother map guides. And I would go in there and I would highlight my sales route. If I had 3 appointments, I'd have to do that. And then a few years later, mobile came out. And a few years later, the internet really took off. And a few years later, we had social. And now we've got maps, and it's easy, to do all that. You can just easily plan out your route, all of that. So there's been a massive change from when we first started to where we are now. And it's been really interesting to see how different cohorts of employees and groups that come in, they are fully integrated with the technology, fully integrated with the processes. It's almost second nature, right? And so you've got a bit of the older people and not legacy, but I mean kind of the legacy thinking, and everybody's highly successful and effective, and everything is fine. Now you've got this full flourishing of tools that's been incorporated. So I guess the biggest observation through all these roles is that adaptation to change, adaptation to technology, understanding why processes are important, understanding why the data is important in terms of improving productivity and driving effectiveness. That's the biggest thing I've seen, because in the beginning you just didn't have to do all this stuff, right? And now you do. And so I think that's one of the biggest observations I've seen, is that change management and that adaptation to the technology piece has been really interesting to observe.
What about lessons that you've carried from those experiences into ioAudio?
Yeah, so build lean. Okay, meaning that build as much as you need to build to be effective for let's say 90 days to about 6 months out. Automate as much as possible. Look at building processes again for that 3 to 6 month cycle, because things will change. But make sure you do have those solid processes in place. Don't stop and wait for everything to be perfect. Do not, because it just never is. And go ahead and just get it out there, do it, get the feedback, and then continue to iterate on the processes. Right now, we're going through transitions in terms of engineering. And so we've had to adopt more processes to track really detailed specs, and making sure that things are going through the right processes all the way through staging and QA. We have to go through all that right now, but that's things will become a mess. Being able to observe that things are not going well and stepping back and saying, okay, we need to create a process here, is really important. That's the biggest thing at ioAudio, is that one of our core values is be a better listener. And that starts with understanding what your current situation is and asking the right questions. And you see this a lot in startups, is that they do get pretty far down the road and things are crazy. Like, it's just like, how are these things operating? And there's no processes, and there's, all the transparency's gone out the window, and things have gotten a little too big and crazy. So that's one thing that we're trying to do more at ioAudio, is that we listen. We understand what the benchmarks and the best practices are. We try to bring those processes in, and we're not committed to staying to that process for like the life of the company. It's not important. Just look out 3 to 6 months and be comfortable with those changes and adaptations. And so that's what we do. Every quarter, we look at everything, and we go ahead and change things.
How do you choose the appropriate time to build a system and process around something? For example, some people have the philosophy of, if I'm going to do it at least twice, I'm going to build a system or process around it. Some people feel like I need to do it at least 10 times before it's worthwhile to build a system or process around it. If you over-optimize too early, you just spend too much time planning to build something that may not be used. Or if you do it too late, then you just are a little less efficient along the way. How do you know, or what is your...
To me, it comes down to people. I mean, so if you've got, and back to the senior level, junior level, and their understanding. So if you've got people that need to be groomed, they might need some more structure and process to understand exactly what to do next. If you've got somebody more senior level and they can just take the ball and run with it, that's cool too. I mean, that's fine. So it really depends, and those people change, right? In a startup, your early group may have materially changed, even 6 months down or even 3 months down. So that's a big factor for sure. Is just looking at the composition of the people, understanding what they know, what they don't know, and then going, okay, we need to optimize or build a process to connect all these people and make sure that we're hitting our objectives. Excuse me. So that's a big factor. It really comes down to the people.
So when you're building ioAudio, for the MVP, is the target customer of the MVP and the customer of today the same?
Well,
And if not, how did it
I think
change?
we got a bit lucky. We had a great partner here in San Diego. Company's name is Rehinged, and Jim and Mati they're fantastic guys. Jim's the CEO. Mati heads up product analytics. He manages the dev teams. So they got involved with our company very early. We were able to leverage their algorithms and technologies to identify intent, identify ideal client profiles, really look at that. And the biggest result of that was really the conversations. I mean, the technology was there and that helped a lot. But they really were able to fine tune and say, look, I mean, this is a digital transformation tool and or a productivity tool. Then we took it a step further and said, okay, now what's the best channels? What's the best messaging to reach that? And now we're booking dozens of appointments per week. And it is like made a night and day difference. Now, prior to that, I thought, okay, well, we need to go granular in terms of sales productivity. We need to go into, HR, or we need to go into healthcare, or, go sell to teachers and things like that. It was a much more kind of granular segmentation approach. And then I was having a hard time. I'm like, how are we going to possibly do this? And so a lot of the comments back from VCs, advisors, all of that, don't go too broad too fast. Okay, focus on one segment, crush it,
Right.
Get your processes down, and then duplicate it out. And I said, well, in my background, I came from ClickUp, right? And I understand the task and project management space. I look at unified communications, and I look at what Slack has done. And you look at all these tools, and yeah, in some cases, they did go into a specific segment, and then they started building from there. Maybe in the early days for their MVPs, they had to focus in because they just had to get those use cases really tight. But very quickly, they said, okay, this tool is relevant for all functions. And it's okay to go horizontal and broad. So the same thing with ioAudio. We said, look, I mean, the ICP is people with productivity and or digital transformation in their title. Let's not worry about the verticals. Let's not worry about company sizes. Let's not worry about geos. We can go and we can target any of these markets on LinkedIn, even on Twitter, and that's what we've been doing. And it's worked really, really well. We're booking about 50% of the connection requests that we get, 30 to 50% will connect with us, and then this is through the LinkedIn automation piece, of course. I'm just giving you one specific example. 30 to 50% will connect with us. About 30% of those will take the first intro meeting, and then once we get the intro meeting, we're converting that to about 80 to 90%. They're saying, yeah, we want to join your beta, or yes, we'd look at doing some sort of licensing agreement. We want to move on to conversations for a proof of concept where we can get hundreds of our employees using the platform, all of that. So if we had stuck to one specific niche, like education, I think we probably would have ended up limiting ourselves. So it was okay to go broad, but it took partners to kind of help us realize that that's okay. And then you start looking at what the competitors are doing, and you start looking at, again, the productivity unified communication space, start adding it together, and you go, yeah, it's okay for a startup to go broad, and we're proving it. So, yeah.
Those numbers you shared on LinkedIn automation are probably the highest I've ever heard of. Is that for your specific
Yeah.
account? Or just
So
for
yeah.
any
So
sales
it is. It is my. That's a great question. So my specific account. Obviously, the chief revenue officer, CEO, founder makes a big difference, right? And then if you go into any connection with
Definitely.
sales, customer success, marketing, okay, that's even going to have a higher level of conversion. But what we're finding with our BDRs, and then obviously some of the other LinkedIn accounts that we have, it's about 50 to 60% of the volume that I can generate based on my profile, which is still great, in my opinion. I mean, that's pretty good that we can do that. It's not in the single digits. It's not like 10 or 15% even, which is great. So yeah, but there's definitely a variance. It's a really keen, astute observation. Founder, CRO, CEO, very different than a BDR role. Yeah, so.
Have you done the calculations and the numbers in terms of assuming those numbers that you just shared for your BDRs, and I guess divided by their cost to figure out the cost of acquisition of a customer compared to, I guess, your budget and how long it takes to get paid back through the, I guess. Actually, are you currently pricing
Right now it's all free.
initial customers?
Right
or
now
are
it's
you
all
doing
free.
it for
But in about a month, we're launching our paid
It's all
plans.
free. Okay. I see. And can you detail what the play plans might look like, or just
Yeah,
just
no, I don't
like,
mind. You know,
the
all about
specifics?
transparency. And I figure by the time the competitors want to catch up, I mean, there's a whole lot of adjustments they'd have to make. So it's all good. It's all good. So there's a free plan, there's a premium plan, there's a paid plan. A free plan, a premium plan, and a business plan. And so the free plan is capped out based on the number of threads somebody can create. And I'm happy to, again, explain our platform and what we do for the audience. And then the premium plan has unlimited number of threads and some more advanced integrations. And then the business plan is, again, unlimited downloads, more integrations, a higher level of support. So those are some of the big differences. But it's based on the number of conversions that you can do in the platform. And that comes back to the amount of threads that you can create. So you want me to clarify that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I think
Sure.
I understand since taking a look at your website.
So a quick
Go ahead,
backgrounder
Brian.
on ioAudio. We focus on the individual's content and converting that into streaming audio experiences. And one of the big differences that we focus on is that in a lot of text-to-speech solutions, you have a widget, for example, in your Word document or an extension in Chrome, and it focuses on a single document or a web page. What we're enabling is almost a podcast-style creation where you can input different pieces of content. It could be a Word document, it could be a URL to a web page, you can copy and paste a piece of text, you can bring in your email from your inbox, and you could have that all be part of one thread. What our system will do is that it will not only cleanse all that content, it'll take away junk text not relevant to the listening experience, but it'll also append all those pieces of content. And then we'll convert it to one file. And that one file gets converted to the streaming audio experience. So you could have 8 pieces of different content. It could be, let's say, 50 different pages. We cleanse it, we connect it all together, and then you could have 40 minutes of listening to that content and right through the player within our platform. So that's what we do. So when I say thread, that means on the free plan, you're capped out at creating 10 of these threads. And then on the premium plan, it's unlimited threads. On the business plan, it's unlimited threads. The premium plan, you have the download functionality. In the business plan, for example, you could do the Slack integration. We've got an integration to Slack, and then more integrations there. So yeah, that's some of the big differences.
And since you're going with the freemium model, what percentage of users in the free plan do you
15%.
anticipate to upgrade either to the business or the pro plan? 15? Okay. Do you have
Not
a clear
yet.
split between
Not yet. We're
Pro
just
and
looking
business, or do you
at the paid plan, the free to paid plan conversion. We're averaging it out at $10 in MRR, $10 per user on the paid plan in MRR. So we've gone conservative. Our premium plan is $15. Our business plan is $25. So we went really, really conservative because we don't have the metrics yet. We don't have the history yet. But yeah, that's what we're basing it off of.
One of the challenges of lower cost SaaS business models, you have to go for large organizations. For example, I think
Yeah.
ClickUp is like, I think it's $3 to $5 somewhere in that range for their entry point of price point. And it doesn't really make sense for someone to try to sell you that if you're an individual user or a single person startup. How do you choose the right company size to go after? Because if your message resonates with specific people, but all these people are in, like, call it sub 10 person companies, even if like those businesses converted at a high rate, it's still a lot of work for not a lot of MRR. How do you
Yeah,
choose to go
that's a great
in
question.
terms of the
So
appropriate size?
there's two sides to it. So we've got a hybrid model between B2C and B2B. So B2C will be primarily driven through organic, through content and social, right? And then, of course, the network effect and viral loops. So that's going to create that B2C environment. Of course, their support level will be a bit different. I think the response times will be the same. It's all good. I mean, they're still going to get very well supported. They can still do feature requests. We'll still be transparent as far as when those features will be implemented or not implemented. All of the same things that a business would expect. So there is that side of it. On the B2B side, it's a bit different because what we're looking at are more complex sales cycles, things that will require customized APIs, because now we're entering into a situation where a company may want to pump thousands of documents through our APIs, have it automatically cleansed, and then enable it in audio format so that people can now listen to their content as an alternate to reading. So that whole sales cycle is just quite different. And then the licensing and pricing and customization around that, all of that's going to be, quite different. So we've got lead generation going on, and then we've got traffic generation to the site. One of the things that is really exciting that, again, I mean, huge thanks to all the companies that have done this before, like ClickUp and Asana and Slack and all those guys, is that they almost were implemented in a lot of larger organizations in a rogue way. Meaning there could be a head of marketing at a large organization that says, I need to organize my resources and tasks and campaigns and everything, assets, all of that in a much better way. And SharePoint's not working, or a Google Sheet's not enough. And so, wow, okay, there's this cool thing called ClickUp or Asana, and I'm just going to go ahead and subscribe to that. And I'm going to start organizing my team and all my projects with these systems. But meanwhile, the COO or whatever their process is for bringing in a new technology or a platform within the organization hasn't been really approved in a corporate sense. What ends up happening is in a large organization, you start seeing, okay, well, yeah, there's this marketing team that's using this project management, task management platform. Oh, and HR is using it too. And, oh, yeah, well, the sales department for enablement, they're using it too. And you start saying, oh, well, there's hundreds of users that are using this platform. None of them are communicating with each other. None of them know that they've licensed or contracted or just, signed up. So now you've got this opportunity to go into the organization and say, let's drive a master sales agreement. Let's get you discounted pricing. Let's get you customer success and, a higher level of customer support. And so those conversations, ioAudio is going in the same direction as that, where we are introducing and educating the market in terms of audio enabling their content, which they haven't really thought about because it's quite cumbersome, right? Editing all these documents and sticking it through some sort of text-to-speech solution. And we've removed all that heavy lifting. And so we're introducing and educating the market. We've made this technology a lot simpler to use, a lot more efficient for a lot of people, and it sits in the middle of people's workflows. But this is not something that's top of mind for many people. So that's the kind of approach we're going to with the B2C and the B2B side, is that we're probably going to get a lot of individuals at large companies going rogue, using this to drive personal productivity, and then we'll see an opportunity to maybe develop something for their company in a larger sense. We're also looking at these individuals becoming champions. And so they also can be fantastic ambassadors. They can open up a lot of doors within organizations if they're committed to our brand, the value and the productivity that they're getting from our platform. That's a fantastic lead source also. So it's all of those things that we're looking at and making sure that we're appealing to all those kinds of segments. Nice.
As a fun side note, my team uses ClickUp for our internal team management. And I've got to say, the free tier is almost too good. There's too many things you can do with the free tier. It's probably one of the best free platforms I have seen. And you're right, that does convert me to become an evangelist of some sort, where I think it is so much better.
Well, and that's a tricky situation, you know, when you're
$0
when you're launching a sales team, right? That is focused on selling on value, not price, right? And you've got a high degree of value at a very, very low cost, plus discount mechanisms, right? You can get discounts and free, all sorts of things. Well, as a salesperson, you're going, well, I'm trying to sell on value, and it produces, it's an interesting startup case, right? When you've got that free to paid, high value situation where a lot of these platforms have dozens and dozens and dozens of features, and people are using them maybe like 10% of the real feature set, but they're so robust that you don't need to necessarily get into, you know, the enterprise plan or the premium plan. And so that becomes a really interesting conversation internally when you're trying to get larger multi-deal contracts, right? And it needs to go beyond some security posture or, you know, these suite of integrations. There needs to be something additional, customer service, for example, right? You know, that could be a whole different level. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the whole free to paid conversion situation and value prop is really fascinating. Constantly something that needs to be reviewed.
So on the other hand, I have examples like Todoist. So I've been a Todoist user for probably about, as long as I can remember, probably like 7-8 years at this point, and it's only been this past year that I converted from a free user into a paid
It can
user.
be.
So
It can be, yeah. And, you know, the business has still got to support the cost of goods.
Yeah.
Because for that free plan, there's still costs associated with it. And I guess, yeah, that's the bit of advice for, you know, people who haven't gone through pricing plans and discounting strategies and, you know, that free to paid conversion process and just trying to figure out the value set. Do your homework there, you know, because you're right. You're going to end up carrying the cost for those free users, or you might have to cancel them, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. And this happens a lot. You see this a lot. Like, you know, people go, again, broader, and they go, well, maybe the SMB market or the individual user might be a better place to go. And then they realize that, well, no, enterprises. So then you've got to migrate that whole cohort, you know, out of that. And that's just a lot of work. But you don't know everything. I mean, you know, getting into it, you don't know. You just kind of make your decisions based on what you know, and of course some benchmarks and you know, other examples. But yeah.
So in the case of ClickUp, in the case of Todoist, I imagine the cost associated per free user is effectively zero. The software's already written. The amount of disk storage that's required is effectively so minuscule. We're talking just like a couple of short strings of text, and that's really about it. Maybe a couple of, like, I don't know, it depends on if they're structured or unstructured, but like no matter what form of data, it's relatively small. But for ioAudio, there is computational power that is consumed by a given free user to do that conversion. Are you concerned that might happen to ioAudio, where people realize like the free version might be all they need and it consumes a lot
AWS,
of company resources in terms
of
I don't know if you use AWS or Google Cloud.
It is a concern. Costs are always a concern, right? And becoming efficient and optimizing around whatever the cost structure is today. But one thing that's happening, and we all know it's happening, is that the cost for all this stuff is coming down. I mean, just building an AI model 5 years ago, you needed a team of data scientists. You needed the massive data sets. You couldn't really leverage other people's data sets. But now, I mean, with AWS, it's not easy, but I mean, you can still create very, very effective AI models and NLP and ML models at a fraction of the cost of what it was. So the cost for this technology is coming down. And so as long as the feature set's relatively the same, then you can kind of see that the cost for the technology is going to go down, and then it becomes, okay, customer service, right? Or feature requests, how is that getting processed? And if you look at it, you would probably know this better than I would, but I mean, roughly, 1 to 2% of your base is going to require some sort of assistance, via a ticket or a chat or something where they're going to need help. And if your model is really operating well, then 95 to 98%, it's just on autopilot. It's contributing to free cash flow. It's great. So you kind of got to look at that aspect of it. And so yeah, I mean, it's always something that I'm thinking about, of course. Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you have a ballpark number in your head off of I guess total expenditure that like AWS AWS
so
costs compose?
Yeah, so on the free plan, I mean, our COGS are about 50 cents per user per month. Okay, on the paid plan, it's about $2 per user per month. Okay, so obviously it's a SaaS business. The margins are going to be good. But then there's heavy expenditures in terms of marketing and eventually more in terms of sales. Obviously, there's costs in terms of engineering and upkeep and maintaining all this stuff, as you know. So, the actual COGS itself, is relatively small. Yeah, I don't know what more I could really share on that. But yeah, I mean, that's always a concern, and something that, we want to look at. Actually, the other part to this is that we're integrating with other technologies too outside of Amazon. So we've got a relationship with Microsoft, we've got a relationship with Google, we've got relationships with IBM, and they've all got great neural networks and text-to-speech technology in the back end. And they see a huge opportunity with us, as we do with them, in terms of we're introducing this whole new medium of content consumption around audio. And it is around that document editing piece and that upfront work that most of the work now is going to need to happen. So yeah, I mean, that engineering piece is constantly being updated in terms of budget and requirements. And every day we're getting feedback from users in terms of their new feature requests. And of course that has to be prioritized and budgeted and allocated and all that stuff. So yeah.
Okay. So I like to generally split these interviews into two portions, or at least include two domains, both the professional as well as like the personal.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the thing that motivates
It's
you to
exciting.
build an audience?
So our daughter, she's 6 years old, and she has just an incredible knack for spatial relationships, logic, putting very complex things together, and simplifying and focusing on the immediate thing. This is what we're observing with her, and it's fantastic. So one of the things that we do is play chess. And I always tell her, she's like, well, why do you want to build a business? And I just go get a job and work. And I'm like, okay. So I relate it back to her. I'm like, it's like playing chess, sweetie. You've got your pieces and this is it. And you've got your board and you've got to make the right decisions. It's going to impact everything. So to me, building a business is oftentimes like a chess game and just putting like a lot of complex pieces and moving parts together. And that's what drives me, is that constant, change and, the challenge of putting all these pieces together in an ever-growing technological landscape, people issues, all of that kind of stuff. It's just a lot of fun. And there's really no holds barred in terms of creating the culture, the coaching relationships, grooming people, making a difference in the things that you do in people's lives. I mean, that is like unrestricted. I've oftentimes found, you work for other companies and other cultures, you have to just kind of stick to your lane. If you go too broad, it's confusing for people. If you're asking questions outside of your role, it's just very like people have a hard time processing that. I don't like those limits. I just don't. And so fortunately, I'm in the position where we've been able to bootstrap this company to this point. As I mentioned, now we're going for our seed round, and those conversations are going really well. So it's exciting putting all this together. And I guess one last note on that is that I've been working on this for 9 years, and it's not a story of like, wow, he just doesn't quit. I mean, when is he going to give up? Like, that's crazy. 9 years. What happened was that it was a classic entrepreneur story where I saw a problem and I'm like, let's build something to fix and solve this problem. It's something that personally relates to me. I was commuting from San Diego to Hollywood, and I had a great job up at J2 Global in Hollywood, but we had a great life here in San Diego. And the family's down here. It's all that. I've lived about a quarter of my life in Los Angeles. I didn't want to move back to LA, and new marriage, kids, part of the plan, all that kind of stuff. So I was commuting and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm coming to the office. I've got all these emails and attachments and things that I now need to sit and catch up to. What if I could just listen to them? So that's what started about 9 years ago. I built an MVP, moonlighted, side hustle while I had the job, took it out to market and realized that this is really not going to be scalable because you have to have these documents going to an editor. We had a platform. They went to an editor, and the editor would cleanse the document and then send it over to a narrator. Their narrator recorded at their home studio and then associate the MP3 file with the user's account. Like, this took 3 to 4 days, and this was well over $1 a page, and this was not a SaaS platform. This is crazy. So I'm like, all right, cool, solution, got a good platform, awesome, but this is not going to go anywhere. I can't get behind this pitch. There's just no way I can go raise money behind this. Then we built an MVP2, and then similar situation. The technology wasn't there yet, but in the last 3 years, with the rise of neural networks, the dramatic reduction in building AI models and ML models, that made the difference. And so it was an exercise in patience and passion and market timing and saying, okay, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to keep this on the back burner. But now the technology's caught up with the vision. And cool, now let's build what we've got coming out, in our beta version, right? Let's build that. And then the accessibility to the cross integrations with Google and with everybody, right? All of that has got way easier and a lot easier to do. So that was the big lesson. 9 years, stay focused, just let the technology sometimes catch up with it. Customers too, like, they get it now. The pandemic's just accelerated everything in terms of that. So people do want alternatives at home and while multitasking, and they understand. I mean, with rise of Clubhouse and just audio is having its moment. So all of that, you have to just be patient, and just say, look, I mean, you got to look at market timing, technology timing, all of that. Cool. Costs of customer acquisition have come down. Okay, now is a good time to launch this product into the market, and awesome. Now we can get 100% behind it and go full force. It is.
Timing really is everything. I think there's probably at least a good half dozen companies that tried to do what Uber and Lyft did before they existed, but due to the lack of cellular penetration, you really can't scale.
That's right. I mean, and could you imagine if Fiverr launched in 2002, 2003? Right. It just like, would people have gotten it? Would people have trusted their secrets and information to, a freelancer in Chennai? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, right? And so Yeah, market timing is so critical, and you hear that so often in entrepreneurial communities and people who've done this, is that timing is everything. And sometimes, forcing it before it's time, you could burn a lot of cash and you could burn a lot of people out and resources. I've desensitized my family a lot because, my dad will ask me, "Oh, you've been talking about this for so long, 9 years, what's wrong with you? How come," he doesn't. I mean, he does. That's a little harsh. He's extremely supportive. He's there for me every step of the way, but he doesn't have that software technology background in the sense that, what we do. And you got to be just patient. Sometimes these tools, need time to mature and catch up and work all well together. And a lot of people aren't going to understand that along your journey. So, and it goes back to that whole story of entrepreneurship and being a founder. It's a very lonely journey in a lot of ways. There's a lot of people that won't understand, what mistakes you're making and the successes you're having and that whole piece of it. So you hear this a lot. I mean, it just takes grit. It takes digging your heels in. It takes that passion to the mission that you're trying to drive for, and not giving up. And then right back to ioAudio, it's about just being a better listener, right? Just listening to everything, listening to yourself, listening to the macro situation, all those things, and then just saying, okay, this is now it's a judgment call. It's a gut decision. There's no more data that I could possibly get that's going to help me drive a decision on this. So I got to bite the bullet and go for it and do it that way. So yeah, it's been an interesting 9-year journey.
How do you combat all the discouragement? I imagine it's impossible to not feel discouragement along that 9-year journey. And 9 years is longer than most people invest into their businesses based on what I've talked to. People usually give up after 1, 2, maybe 3 years. Very few people hold on to it for that long. How do you go against the voice that I imagine exists in your brain that says, this isn't a good idea?
I think it goes back to that
how'd you get
wanting to challenge yourself in ways that you traditionally wouldn't get in a W-2 situation. And that's for me, I mean, that trumped everything. Because I love learning. I love educating myself. I love, again, collaborating and sharing all these things. So these challenges, you just won't get at work. You just won't get them. And so if that drives you, if that motivates you, and that, as it did me, then that just keeps you going. It's not about the fame and notoriety and all the vanity kind of stuff. I mean, that's cool. But as you know, I mean, it takes a lot of sacrifice and it takes a lot of trade-offs to pursue these ideas. And so, I think it's mostly that, just the drive to want to build something and put all these pieces together and challenge my everything, in terms of that. So my wife's a biomedical engineer, and she is fantastic. She's the steady, the stable, the tried and true, right? And she's the reason why I can do what I'm doing and take the risks that I'm taking. Okay, she's the one who's made that possible. As is my family. My dad and mom and the support there. And that's all, very, very good. But I'll tell you, I mean, it's really awkward, tough conversations, when you keep saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And it doesn't happen because some deal fell through, or an investor backed out. And we've got to pull money out of license. All of that kind of stuff. It's very, very tricky conversations to navigate. And so I think it's just that inner drive that goes, hey, I'm okay being embarrassed. I'm okay making mistakes. I'm okay, if somebody doesn't get me and understand, it's okay. Eventually they might or they may not. It's fine. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, David.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. At the same time, I want to be respectful of your time. So I just like to end all of my calls the same way. For
Thanks,
all of our
David. Yeah,
guests that
so
are listening to this,
go to
what's the best way for them to get a hold of you or to find out
ioaudio.io.
more about
That's
you
our
and your company?
website. My LinkedIn, I think I'm the only Spencer Parikh on LinkedIn, I believe. I used to be the only Spencer Parikh on Facebook too, because Spencer is my nickname. My real name is Sachin. So I adopted the Spencer nickname back in my teenage years. And so please, I mean, just feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn anytime. You could drop me an email to spencer@ioaudio.io. I love networking. I love sharing. I love helping fellow founders and business people do what they need to do. So just don't hesitate. I look forward to hearing from you guys.